Ladies and gentlemen, now in today's video, we're going to be having a little bit of a chat about my tier list update for November 2019. So today we got 3 brand new additions to the tier list, along with a couple of promotions as well. I believe on Monday we're going to have the Colossus and Old Man Logan buffs finally arrive, but those haven't been factored into this tier list update, just because there are some additional changes from beta, so I want to test out those champions, see how they are, and then I think toward the start of December, with Doom and Mr. Fantastic, then we'll properly re-tier those characters. So, you know, still another month, man, before they get finally promoted on the tier list, but it kind of looks like both of them are going to come in at high demigod as a bit of a heads up there. But before we start the full November breakdown, standard tier list disclaimer, which we all know and love, that this is a very rough guide to what I personally believe are some of the best and most valuable characters in the game, and it's just my opinion. Marvel Contest of Champions is a very complicated game. There are so many different modes of gameplay, so many different characters, nodes, interactions between the characters. It's very hard to say that this character is always better than this character. It depends on the matchup and what's in play as to who is going to be a good and effective option. So use the tier list for what it is, a very rough guide to what I believe are some of the best characters, and it's just my opinion, and if you want a different opinion, that is totally allowed as well. But anyway, let's have a little bit of a chat about the November update. So let's talk about the 3 new characters that arrived in October. We're going to start with the top character, man, Guillotine 2099, and a way to think about this champion, which is entirely true, is she's just a much better version of Star-Lord. She's got more damage output potential, and like 10 more things she can do utility-wise as well, so she just absolutely eclipses Star-Lord. Her damage output above 400 hits on the combo, 400 to 600, is the best in game. It's so crazy the kind of numbers you can get off this character. Like above 400 hits on the combo, you are seeing 5 combos where you're dealing about 150,000 to 250,000 every single 5 combo. The damage ramp up is so stupid on a fully maxed out like 6-star or 5-star Guillotine, so I think she's very much built for future content like the Abyss of Legends, because at the moment in Labyrinth of Legends it's really hard to get her like anywhere above 400 hits because stuff is just dead before then, but above then, man, she has so much damage output potential. But also on top of that, she has 2 combo shield mechanics, one via a heavy attack and also one via her awakened ability, so if you do mess up, you have something to fall back on, and if you chuck on like the Nick Fury evade synergy as well, you've got a lot of safety net with this character even if you do mess up your combo there. She's also, being a robot, bleed and poison immune naturally, which opens up a lot more options in all sorts of content. She has regeneration via dropping to 15%, kind of like Iron Man or Ultron really, but also the pre-fight ability that you can activate. One of them will heal you for 5% of the damage dealt on every single medium, and this isn't like the biggest heal in the world, but it's enough to keep your Guillotine topped up. Like, we did a 3-star Realm Legend showcase, and it's so valuable, man, because it just kind of removes the need to use potions. So yeah, that's awesome, and also can cover a little bit of the recoil damage if you are using the Suicide Masteries, and again, she's a very Suicide Mastery friendly champion, having a regeneration and also being double immunity as well. She also doesn't crit naturally, so she can counter any scenario where you're in any way punished for landing a critical hit. So nodes like the one in Road to Labyrinth, Spiked Armor, I believe it's called, where you land a crit and you take damage. Champions like Mr. Sinister, Scarlet Witch, any scenario where you would be punished for landing a crit, you can just completely avoid that, which is fantastic. She also has an armor buff, completely countering Havoc matchups, which is very nice. Instead of a bleed, she has a degeneration debuff, and pretty much no champions in the game have a natural degeneration immunity. However, there are scenarios that are debuff immune and also champions that can shrug off debuffs. So, you know, a couple of matchups which can get rid of degeneration, but degeneration, unlike bleed, you know, so many characters are bleed immune, but nobody's really naturally degeneration immune, which is quite fantastic. You've also got a power drain with a special 1 or pre-fight ability. This power drain isn't the best, but it can prevent opponents quite reliably that don't have an external source of power gain, like all or nothing nodes, or those nodes where they go or they have to go like special 1, special 2, special 3. You can prevent the opponent from ever getting to a special 3, so that's quite a nice little bit of utility there, and I imagine it will have its uses. She's also an insane option for Realm of Legends, Labyrinth of Legends, Act 6, very good for the, she works for the Mr. Sinister, also the Crossbones, and also Variant 3 as well. She has so many crazy good matchups in there. One of the cons of Guillotine, though, is she does have fairly low base health, and I think this is probably one of the biggest cons of the character. So if there's a lot of fun and interactive damage that she doesn't really have a way to handle, it can eat through her quite quickly. However, she does make up for that by having slightly above average block proficiency. So when you get parries, you're taking minimal damage, which is always a very nice time. But overall, Guillotine, she brings a lot to the table, and anybody that is lucky enough to pull her as like one of their first 4-star, 5-star, or 6-star champions is going to have so many uses for this character. So I think she definitely belongs in the Beyond God tier category. Now, next up, we got the first champion to be released in October, Elsa Bloodstone. And Elsa, I think, is an alright addition to the game. She's pretty good. She's better than most champions. I kind of wanted her to be a bit better than she actually is, but she's got some stuff that she does really, really well, and she's very fun to play. I kind of just wish the numbers were a little bit more with Elsa. So she has some pretty decent damage output in comparison to a lot of other characters in this game. She certainly doesn't feel like much of a noodle to play there. Very high crit rate as well, especially with the special 1, and if you can purify like any non-damaging debuff, you can get a massive boost to your crit as well, and that's one of her core abilities, is she can constantly purify non-damaging debuffs and turn them into a massive crit buff. So that is maybe a little bit niche at the moment, but I think in the future it's going to have more and more uses. So Elsa Bloodstone is certainly a character to keep a bit of an eye on there. Also, if the opponent does evade, she can apply Cold Snap to counter that evade, so that's a really nice bit of utility for shutting down Spider-Man characters and anybody that can evade there. She also kind of has this brand new mechanic, like an evade parry, which also counts function-wise as an intercept. So that's important to note if there are like mechanics in the future, like we've seen in the past, like Thanos bosses, where in the final phase you need to get an intercept in order to deal damage. But essentially, like, you go for a parry, and instead of parrying, like, Elsa evades and then instantly intercepts, and you can combo on from there. It does have an 11-second cooldown, but it's really, really useful for stun immune matchups, also avoiding a lot of block or parry damage. So Elsa, she's a solid addition, man. I kind of wish she was a little bit better, but I think, you know, if you do get this champion as your first 5 or 6 star, like, you know, she's going to be fairly enjoyable to play for a lot of players there. So a fairly good addition to the game. And then we've got ManThing, the third champion of this month. So ManThing, he's all right. He is maybe a little bit more noodly, especially in comparison to the other 2 characters this month. So ManThing, he's going straight in at the low demigod tier. He's a bleed immune champion. He's got reasonably low block proficiency, so when you're playing this character, it's very evident that you're taking a lot of chip damage, even on the parries, but he does have a big health pool. He's got a lot of hit points there, so there are pros and cons to both, but if you're an intercepting god, you know, this is good news, but if you're an average player that relies on parry, then, you know, you're going to get torn down a little bit playing ManThing. He's got some decent enough damage output, but there's nothing like super special, and he relies on poison for a good chunk of damage output, and a good like 40-45% of champions in the whole game are poison immune, and he's a mystic champion. He's the advantage against cosmics, and a lot of the top cosmics are poison immune characters as well, so he has a lot of matchups where he's kind of very gimped, very taken back in terms of his already fairly underwhelming damage output, which is a little bit annoying, man. He's also a large champion and not an extra large champion, which removes his kind of viability from stuff like Variant 2. He can kind of work there, but again, because of the low block proficiency, just using heavy attacks and special attacks just doesn't work out like super great. You're taking so much chip damage there. You also have a reasonably small fury or regeneration with the awakened ability, and I think if this champion had like decent block proficiency, the regeneration would make him a little bit more sustainable, but because you're being taken down so much by the low block proficiency, it just kind of covers that and not really much else, which is, yeah, just a bit annoying there. He does have a fairly decent like 4 buff nullify on the special 2, and there is a small chance on every single hit that he's also going to nullify the opponent as well. well. If you do mess up, this champion is immune to critical hits, so he can be maybe a little bit more tanky in some scenarios, which is an alright addition there. He also does have a fairly consistent armor break ability as well, which can be nice for matchups like Emma Frost and also Killmonger. So yeah, there are some pros to ManThing. He's got some stuff he can do, but overall, I just kind of wish he was a bit better of a character, man. Like ManThing, I think he disappointed myself and a lot of other people in the community. So yeah, he is what it is. Like, could be a little bit more exciting. Now, on top of the 3 new additions, there's also a couple of promotions that I want to talk about, and I was talking about this toward the end of the last tier list update, but I'm really sold on it, especially in the last month, and going to New York Comic Con as well. So the first one is Warlock is moved up to Beyond God tier. 100% deserved, man. Warlock is such an amazing champion, and he is literally the solution to about 80 to 90% of problem fights in endgame content. It's ridiculous how much this dude can do for you if you upgrade him, and I had so many people actually come up to me in Comic-Con saying, like, I watched your Warlock videos, bro. I went for like a 15k featured, I pulled Warlock, I maxed him out, and I've gone through all this content, but honestly, he's a champion that just does not disappoint. As Warlock being an extra large tech champion, I don't really understand how Warlock is extra large and ManThing isn't. He works for all 3 variants, so he's really good for the second variant, really good for the third variant being a tech character, but also the first one, like, can absolutely shred so many fights in that as well. And the middle, like, tech and mystic champion chapter, like, it's sometimes difficult to find a good option for certain encounters there, but Warlock works really, really nicely for all sorts. Also, like, Alliance Quest being a double immunities champion, can work very nicely for certain paths in like map 6 and map 7. Alliance War, he's crazy good for all these really annoying mutants, any scenario with like really big regeneration as well. There's just so much to play around with in Warlock's toolkit, and I think he's very much deserving of the Beyond God tier promotion. So yeah, I'm very happy to have him there, man. Personally, I've got my rank 5. I love him. I use him all the time for Alliance War, and like, we have so many videos of him just shredding through these tier 1 mutant defenders on YouTube if you want to check those out. Now, the second promotion is on a champion that everybody, including myself, has apparently been sleeping on for far too long, and kind of with this insight that I got from New York Comic Con from one of the QA guys at Kabam who loves Dr. Octopus, and showed me this rotation where you get to the special 2, all 100 research categories, and then just like fire off the special 2, get the heavily extended power lock heal block, and then just intercept spam special 1. It's crazy, man. It's so good. We posted like a compilation of me dominating all sorts of variant fights, like the massively stacked up Havoc, Mr. Sinister, or like a 5-star rank 3 awakened Doc Ock. I wish I had the spare resources at the moment to like take my 5-star Doc Ock up to rank 5, because there's so much I want to test with this champion. And I think after watching that video, like, a few more people wish they had the resources just to like play around with Doc Ock a little bit more. But honestly, he's so good. I think he's very deserving of the God tier category there. But I have added in the high skill requirement and also the awakened ability, because the high skill requirement, you kind of need to play him like magic. You need to be very quick with the intercepts and kind of get those stand-up intercepts and play very aggressively in the corner. But also the awakened ability makes it much more practical to kind of refresh all of those debuffs and spam the special 1, because you're getting the power siphon from it, and also adds in the additional like really good matchup against any scenario that regenerates or Mr. Sinister, because with a heal block you can also siphon all of the healing back to Dr. Octopus, giving him like an insane form of regeneration. It's absolutely mad in Mr. Sinister matchups, but very enjoyable to play around with. So I think Dr. Octopus, he's very deserving of the God tier. We did like a massive compilation video on Dr. Octopus and variant, again if you want to check that one out. But if you don't believe that Doc Ock is God tier, man, you've definitely got to check out that video. But even without that, he's so good for all sorts of stuff in variant, like especially variant 2 as well. You can just spam heavy attacks with him. Variant 3, you can do the full rotation. Variant 1, he's really good for, and a lot of stuff over like Act 5, Act 6, and all sorts of endgame content this champion can be incredibly useful for. So yeah, promotions for Doc Ock and Warlock there. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of the November tier list update? If you did enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. But aside from that, thank you all very much for watching. Take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.